I wanted to ask, what is something that you want to do with your life when you grow up? A lot of people ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? Yeah.
A vet or one of those people who makes coffee.
A vet or a person who makes coffee? Yeah, barista.
I want to be a
Horse
horse owner.
owner?
I want to
Own a shop? Be an astronaut? A mom? Yeah. A counselor? That's cool, yeah.
I'm not sure if this is a job, but a diving.
Yeah, like a diving instructor, a swimming coach. Those are definitely jobs. Yeah. A hockey player? Yeah, there we go. I put down some different ideas. There are other things that you can think about, though, with your future. So, some of them are jobs, but some of them are things like having a family. Where do you want to live? Do you want to live somewhere warm? Do you want to live in Michigan where it's cold, but all your family's here? There are a lot of things that people tend to think about and dream about when they think about their future. And I think that when Paul, who we've been following in Acts, was a kid, he probably had some of those similar dreams. I think that Paul was probably sitting around as a kid thinking, man, someday I'm going to be a Pharisee. I'm gonna train under Gamaliel. I'm going to train under the best guy in Jerusalem. And I'm going to be the best Pharisee out there. In fact, I'm going to be so good that they're going to put me on the Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem. I'm sure he had dreams like that. You know what I don't think Paul was dreaming about? Someday I'm going to be in prison in Caesarea for 2 years. But that's where we meet him. So, as we start out tonight, write down frustration with Festus in your notes. So we had frustration with Felix, and now we have frustration with Festus. That's not confusing. If I say the wrong name by accident tonight, forgive me. So we're in Acts 25 and Acts 26, and I want you to write down the question, how do I respond? How do I respond? I'll give us a second. All right, so Acts 25. We start with Paul in Caesarea 2 years later. So from Acts 24, where we were a couple weeks ago, to Acts 25, where we're at today, in the Bible, it literally takes one verse. In actual time, it takes 2 years. So Felix, who was the guy, the procurator, remember we talked about that? He gets fired, and Festus takes over as procurator. And the procurator has 2 jobs. Does anyone remember what those 2 jobs are? Yeah?
Keep the peace.
Keep the peace. That's one of them. And the other one is? Money. Collecting the taxes. So he'd collect the taxes for Rome, and he'd keep the peace in the city. So Felix gets fired because he was bad at keeping the peace during this 2-year period, and Festus jumps in. And Festus meets Paul, because Paul was just chilling in prison. He meets Paul. He hears about him right away. So the Jews actually went right to Festus right away. 2 years later, new guy comes in. The Jews go, hey, there's this Paul guy in prison. We need to get him tried. We need to get rid of him, basically. So Festus goes, okay, so I'm gonna be the judge. And how about this, Paul, let's take you to Jerusalem, and I'll judge you, but I need the help of the Sanhedrin because it's a religious issue. Now, Paul is sitting there going, okay, Festus, I just did this 2 years ago. Right? He was like, I just was in front of the Sanhedrin. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. They sent me here to Caesarea. Felix couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and now you're trying to do the same thing all over again. He's like, I don't want to play this game. So Paul goes, I appeal to Caesar. Now in Rome, Caesar was like the emperor. He was like the president, if you will. And every single Roman citizen had the chance to say, I appeal to Caesar. My case goes straight to the Supreme Court, basically. It goes straight to Caesar. And so Paul says, I appeal to Caesar. And Festus says, okay, then to Caesar you will go. He's like, I won't judge you now. But in verse 13, something interesting happens. We have King Agrippa come into town. Do you guys like that picture? So King Agrippa, that's me dressed up as King Agrippa. And you'll see why in a minute. King Agrippa comes into town, and Agrippa is a Herod. So who's heard of the Herods in the Bible? You always hear about King Herod, right? This is the fourth and final King Herod of this time. And his dad, King Herod, had James the Apostle beheaded earlier in the book of Acts. His grandpa, King Herod, got John the Baptist beheaded. And his great-grandpa, also King Herod, had all of the babies in Bethlehem killed when Jesus was born. So he comes from a great family, guys, right? we get a backstory though. We have a backstory of who he is and what he's like here. And it says in Acts that he came in all pomp. Does anyone know what pomp means? It's not a word that we use, really, pomp. Yeah.
Maybe like mad.
Not mad. So it actually comes from the same word that we use as fantasy.
Oh.
So it means that he came in and he dressed himself up to be like the big deal king. Now he's not the big deal king. Caesar's the big deal king. Right? He's a young king who he's like a fancy mayor that they gave a lot of privilege to for being a Herod. So he dressed up and pretended he was this big deal coming into town. And he was a big deal, but not as big a deal as he was pretending to be. And he decides that he wants to hear this case with Festus. So we jump into now Acts 26. Paul stands before Festus and Herod, all pomp. And Paul comes in and he's in some tattered clothes. I mean, he's been in jail for 2 years. His breath probably smells a little bit. If you remember some of his physical description, he's short, he's bald, maybe he's got some glasses on. Not very impressive, standing before the impressive King Herod. And what Paul does is he actually steps in and he tells Herod his story. And he specified in his story. So we've heard Paul's story, right? That he was he was a Pharisee. He was persecuting the church. He went on the road to Damascus. He got confronted by Jesus, blinded, and then was healed of his blindness. And now is preaching what God has told him to preach, to salvation for the Jews and for the Gentiles. And he said, I'm preaching what God has revealed to me. I'm preaching the resurrection because God's revealed it to me. And Festus stands up at this point in Paul telling his story. And Festus looks at Paul and goes, man, you're crazy. Like, you're nuts. Get out. You're too fresh short of a Happy Meal. Get out of here. You heard that expression? It means you're crazy. He's trying to dismiss Paul's story. He's like, no way. You're just insane. But then, in verse 25, something interesting happens here. When you're called crazy, how do you respond?
Probably
Mad. That's exactly what I'm looking for. If someone calls me crazy, my initial reaction is going to be like, no, you're crazy. Right? You want to defend yourself and attack the other person back. Paul stands up and says this. He says, I am not out of my mind, most excellent Festus, but I utter words of sober truth. For the king knows about these matters, and I speak to him also with confidence, since I'm persuaded that none of these things escape his notice. For this has not been done in a corner. King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you do. Pause. That was a lot to take in. But what Paul realizes here is that Agrippa was raised in the Jewish community. Agrippa was raised knowing about the scriptures because his family ruled over the Jews. So he looks at Agrippa and he says, you know this stuff. You were there. Like your family was all around it. You guys saw the whole Jesus thing happen. You were part of it. And you know the Old Testament. You know what it says about a Messiah coming. You know it. I know you do. And you can't deny it all. And Agrippa looks at Paul and goes, you've almost persuaded me to become a Christian. And then, this is how the chapter ends. He turns to Festus and goes, this man might have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar. Because this case is out of our hands. It's in Caesar's hands now. But if it were up to, Agrippa basically says, if it's up to me, I'd let him go. But it's not up to me anymore. Paul was this close to his freedom, but he didn't get it. But the interesting thing I want us to point out here is the two responses. And I think this is really important. There are two different responses here to Paul's story. We've seen the same response come from Claudius Lysias in Jerusalem. The same response come from Felix. And now the same response come from Festus. And Festus, I think, describes it as clearly as possible, which is, Paul, you're crazy. The other response that Paul gets is from King Agrippa, who's probably the least likely character to say this, but he says, you've pretty much persuaded me to become a Christian. And I want us to look at this next slide and laugh for a second at the close-up of me dressed up as Agrippa. Which one are you? Are you Festus? Or are you Agrippa? When I'm up here talking about the Bible, when you're confronted with the truth of God, how do you respond? Do you respond thinking, man, this is crazy. I just can't. This is too much. Or do you respond with, I get it. I can see it. You probably fall into one of those two camps. I think we all fall into one of those two camps. And if you fall into the camp of, man, this Bible stuff, this Christian stuff, this is crazy. I can't believe that. I want us to look at one difference between Festus and Agrippa. Festus didn't know his Bible. He didn't study it at all. He didn't know the Old Testament. He didn't know the prophecies. And he looked at it and goes, man, this thing's crazy. Agrippa knew the Old Testament. He knew the prophecies. And he looked at it and goes, no, this makes sense. If you're Festus, I want to challenge you. Study. Study your Bible. It'll make sense. And on the other hand, if you're Agrippa, we don't know if Agrippa got saved here. It's one thing to know all the facts. It's another thing to know the God behind all the facts. And I want to tell a story really quickly to close out our lesson about this. And some of you may have heard this story. I told it last year, I think. So this is a picture of me with some of my friends, and we went to a water park called Raging Waves. It's in Illinois. It's Illinois' largest water park. And my buddy here in the middle, his dad helped open this water park. So we were like, we're going to this water park. It was the middle of summer. We're like, we're going to this water park. It's going to be so much fun. We woke up at 4 a.m. We drove 4 hours to the middle of Cornfield, Illinois. And we get there, and the parking lot, there's a line from the gate into the parking lot. There's probably over 100 people standing in line, and I go, oh, this is the worst. I don't want to wait in line. And my friend looks at me and he goes, no, we're not waiting in that line. And he goes, look over there, and there's a side gate. And we go over to the side gate. His dad meets us at the side gate, who helped open the park, right? He opens up the side door and lets us in. We get to go up in, you see the little windows above the sign? We got to go up in the office up there and peek out over the people still waiting out in the parking lot. And then my friend's dad looks at me and goes, hey, why don't you guys go down to the pool floaty rentals and get yourself some tubes, and then go and check into the cabana and look at what you want to order for like service for food for breakfast. The park's not even open yet, and I'm going to go pick out my inner tube and find my cabana. Like, I'm living the dream right now. And I realize, looking at that, I did not earn any of that experience. There's nothing I could have done to earn an experience like that, right? I couldn't have entered a contest or paid enough money to get special treatment like that. But I knew the right people. I knew my friend, his dad, ran the show. And that's how it works with God. Your relationship with God is most important. And you can know His Son so that you get that special treatment in heaven. It's not about knowing all the facts. It's not about what you do, but it's about who you know. So I want to encourage us tonight. We're thinking about, are we Festus? Are we Agrippa? I want us to think about, do we know Jesus? So that's my encouragement tonight, is that we would know Jesus. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we're going to head to our small groups, all right? Dear Lord, we thank you for this passage. We thank you for Paul's boldness and confidence. And we thank you for the truth of your word. I just pray that as we look at these questions of who we are, how we respond to you, that we would respond well, and that we would be earnest and passionate in seeking truth in your word. And I just pray that over each of these students tonight, God, that you would give them a fire to seek after you. We pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.